Hide your maze tattoo, update your conspiracy board, and get ready to weather the storm with us as we return to Haven. This is Troubled, the self-proclaimed #1 Haven rewatch podcast. Debuting back in 2010 as a Sci-Fi Channel original show, Haven stars Emily Rose, Lucas Bryan, and Eric Balfour as they take on a different curse every week while trying to solve the mysteries of Haven. I'm your first host, Alex French.
And I'm your co-host, Rich French, the French that hates Texas Hill Country mountain cedar pollen. It's no joke.
So we're back with season 2. Took a little tiny break, but we're back, and we're going to continue. We're covering episode 1 of season 2, A Tale of Two Audreys. As like every episode, we're keeping this the same, no drastic change in format. We're going to just summarize the episode real quick for those who aren't watching, which might be a bigger group now that Netflix has removed Haven, and we haven't heard of where they're moving to yet. All right, so this episode begins like literally the second the finale of season 1, episode 13, Spiral, ended, right? It ended with that FBI agent showing up and being like, I'm Audrey Parker as well. So we kind of pick up right where we left off, right? With them pointing their guns at each other and trying to figure out this new mystery. Exactly.
And eventually our Audrey gets the new Audrey to drop her weapon.
So they're going to kind of take her away. Meanwhile, Duke goes to, or Audrey's like, how do you know, before I jump to that, Audrey's like, how do you know any of this isn't crazy? And he's like, come on, whatever. Like, it's a trouble. Who knows what's going on? Let's go do you want to go eat or something? And she's still a little worried. But meanwhile, the Rev has called Duke to to meet with him to talk about the future of Haven, right? Similar to kind of how things went with when he confronted Nathan in the chief's former chief's office.
Exactly. The Rev was close with Duke's father, and he would like Duke to kind of fill the role his father had.
Right. There's a little kid reaching into a storm drain in reference to another Stephen King story, and he starts screaming. They kind of pull his arm out, and his arm is covered in blood, but it's not a wound. We see the water is turning to blood. As sprinklers turn on, blood starts spraying everywhere. And we got a biblical plague on our hands, I guess.
We don't know that yet.
Wow. It's the first of a biblical plague, we can say it. Because the next one is Audrey and Nathan, God, what do they call her on the commentary?
The creators call her Fraudry.
Right. So they got Fraudry handcuffed in the back, and they're about to take her when it starts raining frogs, similar to when it rained birds and consumed. Frogs flying everywhere, smashing into cars. They got to jump in. So I think we got the hint that we're in a biblical situation here. There's like a car crash afterwards, right? They're kind of trying to take Fraudry to the station when they encounter a car accident.
Well, exactly. They see a swarm, and then they kind of follow the direction of the swarm, and that's where they hear a car crash. Well, when they get to the car crash, they realize that one of the drivers has up and ran away from the scene, and one of the officers figures out why, because he finds a 6-pack of tall boys and partially drank tall boys. So our hit and run driver was doing a little partying.
Right. So as they're investigating, they pull somebody out of the other car, and they got to perform CPR on them because they might be injured. And as we see, Fraudry starts doing CPR, after she convinces Audrey to unhandcuff her. She's doing the CPR just the exact way Audrey would. And she's like, oh, where'd you learn how to do that CPR?
Yeah, Campfire girls.
Exactly. So they both know how to do CPR from Campfire girls, which is even more mysterious with our second Audrey. Duke shows up, right?
Yeah, he shows up and he tells them about the blood at the church. Before he can get any further in it, he spots a woman in the crowd who he apparently knows because it freaks him out when he sees her. So he splits. Yeah.
And then flies kind of burst out of a pipe, right? Or something like that.
Yeah. I think they burst out of a cannon and somewhere else. Yeah. But not a tailpipe.
Audrey calls Agent Howard to tell her, hey, did you send another FBI agent? He's like, no, hold her prisoner until I get there. We're going to figure this out. And Audrey's like, well, okay. So she's kind of holding new Audrey for Agent Howard, and while they go to begin their investigation, right? And Nathan decides to go visit the Rev to see what's up, because if this is biblical shit and the plagues of Egypt, who's the person to talk to except the guy with the wrath of God on his side?
Right. Yeah, he does. He goes to see the Rev, and the Rev says, yep, it's 10 biblical plagues of Exodus. Hey, you might want to pay attention to that firstborn son one.
Yeah. And Nathan's like, why do you want to like punish the troubled people?
Exactly. And the Rev's like, I really don't want anyone punished. I just want the cursed to ask for God's forgiveness.
Meanwhile, back at the station, Dave and Vince come to Audrey and they're like, hey, we got to bury the chief and we got to tell people, that he's gone because, people are going to start wondering, and they're kind of, figuring out arrangements, and they're going to put in a word for Nathan to become the interim chief. Meanwhile, they're looking into these plagues, and Audrey and Nathan are kind of like looking at it, and Fraudry is helping Audrey along, even though her detective skills are so keen that she's joining in on the investigation since people are getting hurt, and that doesn't fly with her.
Right. And new Audrey helps her figure out the pattern. It is indeed the hit and run driver who is bringing the plagues, and wherever he goes, they're following him.
So they're going to go look for that guy. They found out, I think they've linked the car to a family called the Schuberts, so they're going to go visit the house. Meanwhile, Duke returns to the Cape Rouge to find the woman from the crowd sitting on his bench. Everybody likes to come onto the Cape Rouge and sit on his bench, I guess. I guess that's the way to really piss off Duke. Because when he gets
no boundaries. They have no boundaries.
He's already immediately like, hey, what are you doing here? I don't want nothing to do with you. Get the fuck out of Haven, blah, 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 blah. And he introduces her as
Evie, Evidence Ryan.
Yeah.
And they clearly have been involved in capers and scams in the past. And,
Yeah, as they mentioned, like, oh, I helped you on this one, but you also hurt me on this one, yada, yada, yada. So she's kind of like trying to get him involved in a new one, and he doesn't want anything to do with these. Like, get the fuck out of here. So she leaves. There's a couple more scenes like this throughout the episode, so we're just going to quickly summarize most of them right here. Like, they meet again at the Grey Gull, and she's like, hey, come on, let's get involved. And he's like, no. So meanwhile, they go to the Schubert house, and they're like, hey, we found your car. What's going on? And they're like, oh, it must have been TJ. TJ's, been having a hard time, so he must have gotten drunk and crashed it or something. Yeah, so TJ and their daughter, Connie's baby, they've been taking care of it because Connie is no longer with us. So they're getting calls. So, Audrey and Nathan are trying to figure out, okay, TJ must have this like trouble or something, but what the fuck's going on? They get a call for a guy who's been struck with boils, right?
The first call they get is actually to a farm.
Yeah, livestock is dead. Hundreds of CG computer generated cows everywhere in the field. And then we get to the boils, right? Where the guy reveals, hey, TJ was trying to buy a gun. So I didn't sell him one because, legally, blah, 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 blah. But this guy, Little Mike, sells guns at the Grey Gull. You should go talk to him because that's the guy who's probably going to sell TJ a gun. So they get to the Grey Gull, Duke comes up, right? And kind of explains what's the situation with TJ.
Yeah, they get there and they're looking for TJ, and then all of a sudden they start hearing hail hitting, and of course they look outside. It starts hailing. There's a little even some flames with it that be consistent with the biblical plagues of Exodus. And TJ uses that opportunity to escape and avoid them and drive off in the car he carjacked because he loves drinking and driving apparently quite a bit.
Right. So Duke's like, hey, he, his wife died giving birth to their kid, and he's been all fucked up since. Right. And they talked to Little Mike, the guy who sold him a gun, to confirm, yeah, I sold him a gun. He's got a handgun now. So they're like, oh, fuck, great.
No, remember, he didn't say he sold them a gun. He says he knows he left with a gun.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't want to implicate himself.
Right. So they're leaving, and Nathan's like, hey, Duke, you got to come with us because I'm the firstborn son, so I might die. And in case that happens, Audrey needs help. So you're coming with us. Duke's like, oh, my God, fuck, let's go. They all get in the car. So now we got, the quad group. It's Audrey, Nathan, Fraudry, and Duke. When that's when it kind of comes out that the chief is dead, and Duke is stunned, wondering why. Nathan, is kind of like, oh, shit, you didn't even tell me. Kind of type thing, and they tell you, yeah, he's in the cooler.
Yeah, and Nathan wants Audrey to make sure if something happens to him that she buries the chief.
Right, so they get to the house. They get to TJ's house. The Rev is out there with a whole flock of people, because for the biblical end times and shit, and everything looks dark. It almost looks like an eclipse outside of TJ's house, and they're basically like, hey, Rev, fuck off. Don't be turning this into an event type thing. And both Audreys go inside, right?
Right. Bud and Arlene tell them that both Audrey's that TJ's upstairs with the baby and a gun.
So they go in the room and TJ is totally racked with guilt. He's kind of out of control. He's like, blah, 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 blah. I'm causing this. I realize it's coming from me. And, he talks about that he's reading the Bible and stuff. And Audrey puts it together. She's like, oh, what you're reading is what is coming to fruition because you read it. And he's like, oh, shit. She's like, were you reading about the plague? He's like, yeah, I was reading Exodus. Like, da, 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 da. So before he can kill himself, they convince him to read like a children's book.
Right. The Velveteen Rabbit.
Yeah. So that causes, because outside the 10th plague is hitting. Nathan's like collapsed and is on the verge when they convince him to switch books.
Right. And other members of the Rev's flock are afflicted with as they're the firstborn sons. But luckily, Audrey's plan works. He keeps reading the Velveteen Rabbit to the baby, who is a firstborn son as well. The baby stops crying, starts feeling better, and Nathan is able to recover. And then we see a little shadow of a rabbit shadow on the walls in the bedroom.
Oh, right. Everybody comes outside. It's kind of like, hey, we saved the day. Yeah. And the Rev kind of comes up to the main group and is like, hey, there's something coming. You're going to have to, Duke, I know you like to be neutral. And Nathan, you just fucking chose your side as the wrong side. But there's a war coming. You're going to end up on one side or the other. You can't stay neutral. So you boys better pick right on the roads you're traveling. It's not too late to change.
Because the lamb will never lie down with the lion.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Duke goes to talk to everyone last time. She's like, yeah. Like we find out, he wants her to get out of town because it's so dangerous. And then that's kind of when it's revealed that she's his wife. Exactly.
And you can tell she's from Duke's world because she's like, I'll be the one who decides if I can run a scam on this stuff. And she says, I'll see you around. So she's not going anywhere.
Yeah, everybody leaves. Duke and Nathan goes to bury his father. He goes to bury the chief finally, and Duke joins in and helps him out. And that's when Duke's like, hey, you didn't even tell me your dad died. He's like, you didn't even tell me you were married. So I think we're about even.
Yeah, he's just trying to score a few points with the new chief. Right.
Yeah.
Because the Teagues have already earlier had talked to him, and he had, that he's be the chief and announced that the chief had died.
And then meanwhile, we cut back to the Grey Gull, and Audrey and Fraudry are having a conversation, and they're having a recollection of a memory they both share, which is when Audrey was a kid. One of the girls at the foster home was telling her that the foster father was abusing her. And so Audrey went and stabbed him in the neck with a pair of scissors, right? And they both neither of them ever told anyone that. And yet they both know.
And Fraudry asked her Mickey Mouse scissors, and then they both knew it was a shared memory.
Right. And so Agent Howard's coming in the door, but when we see him to come collect Fraudry, it's actually a different guy. It's not the Agent Howard that we've been seeing. Someone different comes, and Fraudry goes up to him and is like, hey, don't worry about it. Because right before then, Audrey had been like, I'll protect you. Don't worry. Like, we'll figure this out. Just lie. Like, I'll help you out. So Fraudry kind of returns the favor by protecting our Audrey.
Right. She says the fraud is in the wind and heading towards the Canadian border. So to throw him off our Audrey's tail.
Yeah. And that's it. That's kind of where it ends. Everybody, the shocking realizations.
Okay, so that kind of wraps up episode 1 of season 2 of Haven. And, now it's time that your favorite part of the show, which is, well, let's face it, all parts are favorites. But one of my favorite parts is our rating, where we get to talk about the Frenchometer. And so I really love this episode. And I thought it was a great start to the second season. They really set up the second season well while they wrapped up some loose ends from season 1. And then, I also loved the Nathan and Duke moments. They were very enjoyable. And actually the scenes with Audrey and Fraudry were as well. I also love the Plagues of Egypt concepts because I've loved that since I was a kid. I grew up watching the Ten Commandments on Easter every year. So I'm a big fan of the plagues in storytelling. So on the Frenchometer, I have to give it a 9. I think it's really strong, a really strong
9.
start.
Wow, it's pretty high.
It's one of my favorite episodes, actually. I really like it.
Did you like it more than Sketchy? You gave that one a pretty high. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if I give it a 9. I give it like an 8. It was pretty good. I thought it was very coherent coming out of a very chaotic finale. I think other than the Duke and Evie scenes, which felt a little repetitive after a while of just like yeah, join me, no, leave town, no. Other than that, I thought it was a very well constructed episode. We got a lot of each kind of piece of the pie rather than focusing completely on one thing. They did a good job of distribution of time and story. Like we got enough of the threat of the Rev, we got enough of fraudery, we got enough of kind of the tapestry of the town, right? With Dave and Vince being like, hey, we got to get an interim chief, and Nathan and Duke's relationship, Audrey and Nathan. So we kind of got a nice balance, I thought, of everything with introducing Evie into the team.
Right. And I would agree with you that it might have been a little much. I mean, at some point, when does Duke have to get a restraining order? On Evie. He's clearly stalking him.
Yeah.
I really like that they started it right where started season 2 right where season 1 ended. I thought that was really cool because you don't always get that with TV shows. I mean, a lot of the time when you get a season 2, it's like months or, time has passed, and then you take up valuable time kind of recounting what has happened in between the end and start of the next season. So I thought that was a really cool thing.
We always like to do an extra segment at the end of the episodes. This one's we're just going to be talking about how TV shows handle jumping from predominantly from season 1 to season 2, but we'll talk a little bit more about other season jumps, but kind of just talking about the nature of jumping from season to season and how that works. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. It was funny in the commentaries when they talked about how they actually reshot that final scene, because I was like, yeah, it looks a little different, which if you were watching in real time, I definitely didn't catch that. This time I was like, hey, this looks a little weird. Like this doesn't look exactly like how I just saw it like a couple of weeks ago.
Well, as I was watching the commentary, that's when I noticed. I was like, oh, you're right. Yeah, it is a different season. And I be honest, I didn't catch it. And kind of the neat thing is Ernst & Dunn said they reshot the entire last scene of that just for the beginning intro, previously on Haven. So that it looked consistent. So
it would look weird if they didn't, because you can't match. So they did 10 biblical plagues. So did they get all of them? Do you know how well do you know your plagues?
Well, I'm normally more of a fan of famine, but when it comes to plagues, they did get them all, and there was one that they.
So they got turning water to blood. They got frogs. Did they get lice or gnats?
Gnats, yeah, gnats were what caused TJ's
the car
accident.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, wild animals are flies, so we got the flies. Pestilence of livestock, so we got that. Yep. Boils, we got that. Thunderstorm of hail and fire, we got that.
Very little fire, more hail, but yes,
locusts.
It's mentioned like on the radio, I believe.
Yeah, because I think in the commentary they said that they had a cricket scene that got cut out of the show that they just didn't have time for.
Oh, let me tell you, thank God they didn't go with their original idea for the plague on the livestock, where they wanted them to be in a room with wallpaper with cows on it, and then all the paint starts running, and essentially the wallpaper cows were dying. And thank God they were the only two who thought that was a good idea. So now you know why it takes a team.
Yeah, I'm hoping Sean Pillar, was the volleyball defense spiking that back at them. Like, yeah, no, don't do that.
No, don't do that.
Then we had darkness for 3 days. They didn't have 3 days, but they had darkness at the end.
Because everything's accelerated because of TJ's power, right?
Yeah, so they, really just the kind of locusty one is the only one we didn't really see. I don't remember hearing it, but I believe you. But yeah, we didn't see it, but we could have gotten out on the car ride, on the car ride to.
I think it came over radio at some point, so it's probably not worth rewatching it to verify.
All right, so we got a new character this season. We got Evidence for Ryan, Evie. What do you think about the name? Let's have a discussion on the name, because I think we both wanted to ask each other, like, hey, what do you think about Evidence Ryan as a name?
So when I first heard it, I was cool with Evie. I was like, okay, cool. And then when he's like, Evidence Ryan, and I was like, Evidence?
Well, I think he says Evidence Ryan first, doesn't he? I thought he said the name. I thought he said Evidence Ryan, then he calls her Evie, because I'm like, are we going to call her Evidence all season? Like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. But, then when I hear it, I'm like, who the fuck names their child Evidence?
And then you listen to the commentary.
and then I listen to the commentary, and they're like, and they say, hey, Charles R. Dye, who works on the show and is also the head of hard crime fiction.
Hard
hard case crime. Well, maybe he started hard crime fiction as an offshoot, but nonetheless, he runs a publishing house for crime novels and of evidence. That makes sense. So I think it makes sense for their baby, but not for this character.
For Evidence or Die. I think it's fine. When I first heard it, I was like, and then I was like, yeah, I like it. Then I was like, I don't want to hear it all the time though, because it sounds kind of cheesy. But I think Evie, her full name being Evidence, but going by Evie's cool. So I'm down with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with Evie, and still not going to turn me to like that first name. Yeah, would you like to have been Evidence French?
Well, it's a girl's name, No, I'm just kidding.
Evidence.
Mine would be like Perpetrator or something, or what manslaughter maybe. If we're talking about like crime related names, manslaughter would be a pretty badass first name.
That'd be better than Forgery French. I mean,
Forgery's kind of a cool name. I you know what? Forgery wouldn't be bad. You go by Forge. That's a pretty like badass like name.
Well, I'll call your mother and see if she's willing to have the birth certificate amended. Yeah, the Forgery French.
Forgery French. There's alliteration. That's all you need.
Want to talk about some King references in there? Because there's a pretty big one early on.
Oh yeah, there's a huge one at the beginning. So yeah, because you see like a paper boat going down the stream, the drain stream down the sidewalk, and I was like, oh man, are we gonna do it? And then and I was like, oh, it's a nice little touch, and then it blew up into a big it reference. I was like, oh fuck, they're going full on. Yeah, they're going all the way with this reference.
Yeah. Full on Georgie, because a little kid comes out chasing the boat, and he's wearing a yellow slicker and galoshes, just like Georgie in It. And sure enough, same thing. Boat goes into the sewer, and hey, I'm gonna stick my arm in there. Thank God there was no clown in there this time. Yeah, Pennywise is menacing.
Oh yeah, they're not in Derry, so no clowns. No clowns in Haven. Yeah, then he reaches in, he screams. You're like, oh, yeah, just like the arm getting ripped off. Arm gets pulled out, covered in blood. And like we said, it was a biblical plague. So, yeah, it was a cool King reference. It was a little heavy. I was like, this is pretty intense, like It reference.
Yeah, it was pretty overt. I mean, yeah, I generally enjoy the more subtler ones.
Yeah, I was like, I would have liked if we just saw the kid running down the block in his yellow slicker chasing a paper boat and we don't really see anything else of it. I've been like, oh, that's cool. But seeing the arm, kind of the whole shtick, I was like, yeah, it's a little much.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But, in 2011, would kids still be wearing yellow slickers and yellow galoshes?
No. Well, the galoshes weren't yellow. Those are black.
Were they? I don't know. Whatever. But, yeah. Come on. How many kids have galoshes anymore? By the time I got to high school, it was just your feet are going to get wet. Live with it.
Well, I think every season we kind of amend Dave's outfits, right? I think so. We're not quite a bow tie era yet with Dave, right? But now he's added the hat.
Yeah, he's got the hat. Well, and
do you think it's from Sam Ernst's personal like wardrobe, the hat? Do you think he took it right off his head and was like, here you go. Yeah, let's change up Dave's look a little and just tossed it on him?
I'm thinking the actor who plays Dave just saw it on Ernst and he was like, hey, this will really finish off Dave's attire right here.
Maybe it's like, it's so fucking cold and I'm bald, so I need to cover my head, because that's all they talked about in the commentary was how fucking cold it was, apparently.
Well, that's like me. I wouldn't have been able to shoot scenes without a hat on. I'm sorry. I'm bald, man. My head gets cold. Hey, you could. Oh, when you're acting, like the second it cuts, there's like somebody there who comes and runs up and puts like a blanket on you and puts your, fucking brings your hat and gloves and shit. So it's not like you don't just stand there, like, unless it's obviously very consecutive quick takes. Most of the time they rush you to or a heated tent. I know on sets I worked, you set up a little like 5x5 personal tent with sides on it. And then like you put like a heater facing inward. So then they locations usually has heaters. So I'm sure the actors, while cold, while performing, they got treated well. They usually do. Obviously, I'm sure they're treated well.
Yeah, the trial of Audrey Parker, where they're on the boat. Yeah, that's a little different story when you're like, on the boat. I'm sure that was a bit harder.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, like on the rare nights it gets cold down here and I'm playing tennis, I take my hat off and, you can visibly see, steam come off of it. So you'd have to like edit that out and like CGI it or something if that were to happen.
Well, Dave was like indoors the whole episode, so no worries there.
Yeah, I like that we had Dave and Vince back, and that they were, and I really like that scene where they approach Nathan at Haven PD, and they're, basically, hey, you got to tell the world the chief is dead, and we got to, we got to explain the events that took place, So it was really cool because Nathan basically and we knew he had to, but he stepped into the Chiefs role. Here's the information. Here, you guys come up with a story to cover, the events. And Dave had a great headline. Global warming comes to Haven, and I thought that was pretty cool, and
yeah,
a neat scene.
Yeah, I thought this episode did. I also liked kind of how the Rev presents the difference in Duke and Nathan, right? He kind of sets up this like philosophical question of like, hey, there's a war coming and there's a road that's going to go two ways. And like, you guys need to figure it out. And like, it kind of is emblematic of kind of their roles in Haven as we've seen it and how we will see it moving forward, is like, will they travel to get there together, but not the same? So, how will that change, over time? Are they going to split eventually?
Right, because Rev had hoped both of them would join his side in the war, but he knows Nathan's already made his choice, and
shit, Nathan has a trouble. Of course, he's gonna not side with Rev.
Yeah, and then Duke, who's tries to stay out of things, but eventually, the Rev says a side will choose you. So
yeah, you can't stay neutral forever.
You're right. I think that's really cool. They're setting it up. Boom, it's going to be Rev and Holy Rollers against the Troubled. And
I mean, he won our Survivor episode, so who knows? His odds are looking pretty good to win the war.
Yeah, based on that, I mean, somehow he's able to forge all of these connections and alliances. So I'd keep my eye out for him. I think he's going to be very important as the season goes on.
We talked a little bit about the commentary. So this one is done by Ernst & Dunn, creators, and they also wrote the episode with our old-time favorite director, T.W. Peacock, returning to direct. As they said, it's a little difficult directing the first episode as everyone's kind of coming back from the break and everything, getting everybody focused again. The commentary, did you think it kind of sounded... The actual recording kind of sounded like shit, I thought. It was a little staticky. I had headphones on when I was like listening to it, so you could hear. There was no so when you're kind of doing audio for stuff like this, you have like a room tone. So because when you are on a blank track, it's obviously dead silence, and then when you're putting on someone's voice, you can hear the background static like spike, right? So you need to put a layer underneath to kind of disguise when the audio is coming in and out. But they didn't do that for the commentary, so it'll be completely silent and like. And then you hear like white noise kick in and then their voice, and you can hear this like static through the whole thing. At least I could with headphones on. I don't know how it was off the TV.
Well, I didn't listen with headphones and didn't really think much of it, but I did notice the audio quality wasn't the same as the previous season's commentaries. So
yeah, season one had fine audio quality. This one was, and then someone's phone went off during it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that someone's phone went off in it. And well, and one thing I'll say for the listeners, if you decide to go the route that we are, and you're going to buy the Blu-rays for the series, just want to give you a spoiler alert. They give a lot of spoilers during the commentary. Yeah, they did it in season one a couple times, but I mean, this commentary, they gave two incredibly massive spoilers. Massive. So.
Yeah, they're operating under the assumption that you've watched the whole season and that you've come back to rewatch it, the season a second time with the commentaries on, rather than what we're doing where, we watch the episode and then watch it again with the commentary. So they're operating under the assumption everything about that season.
Right. And I don't think that's unreasonable, but it makes our job a little tougher to do.
So there's a lot of interesting things I thought in the commentary. One, they confirmed that they knew they were, I don't know if it was because they were recording it after season 2 had finished or if it was known during season 2, but they knew a season 3 was on the way. So at first I was like, fuck, if they knew at the beginning of season 2, that means that they're going to fuck around and not give us answers again. But I'm not sure on when they got the information that they were getting a third season. So maybe we'll find out in further commentary. It was nice. I like the commentary because it was nice that Dunn, he still has some jokes and stuff, but it seemed like he had a lot more serious points to make than he did in season one commentaries. He kind of would joke around a lot in the season one. This one, he kind of would talk more about the story. So I was impressed. I was like, oh, okay, Dunn. And he did get me to laugh once. He did get a chuckle out of me with the digital milk.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. I actually laughed at that too. But
they mentioned that the cows are dying, and Sammer's like, yeah, they're all digital cows, and Jim Dunn's like, yeah, it's where digital milk comes from, or something like that. And it got me to laugh. I wasn't expecting it. One super interesting thing I found in the commentary was that cop, right? The one who's kind of friendly and talking to them a bunch. They have this cop in the episode who kind of has like a couple moments where you're getting like, usually when there's like a background extra or something, you kind of see his face, but you can tell they're a type of actor who doesn't have a lot of magnetism. So it's a type of actor that you're not going to focus necessarily on them as much as you're going to be like, okay, they gave me a piece of expositional information that I need, right? Like there's been cops in past episodes who say something and you're like, oh, I couldn't remember what that guy looked like to save my life if I had to. But this cop, had a more, you can tell that like there was some thought into this character with like casting and writing. He got completely cut out of the story because they were running too long, but I thought it was a really interesting story that they had for the side character. But yeah, like the subplot is that he is actually secretly one of the Rev's like acolytes, right? That you'd find out towards the end of the season that he's been working with the Rev, or maybe I couldn't tell if they meant he was going to get revealed in episode 1 to them or to us, but that by the end of the season when we kind of see the Rev's group that he was one of the inner circle.
Right. I think that would have been neat. Just the problem is that it's network television. They only had so much time, and
right.
You're getting 10 plagues in, and handling introductions of new characters. I mean, it probably was too much. It would have been neat if there was a director's cut. But
well, I was kind of like, oh man, what? Because I kind of like the cop. I thought he seemed kind of cool. I was like, oh, this guy seems like a nice guy. It was like the equivalent of finding out a cop has like a KKK robe, I was kind of like, what? Like a little betrayed feeling where I was like, this guy's a bad guy. Like I thought he was kind of cool. He seemed like he really wanted to help. But going back to the It reference, still within commentary discussion, is Sam Ernst mentioning that he was like, yeah, I think Jim Dunn's like, yeah, it's, this right there, page 1 of It, is Georgie in the boat and, getting his arm ripped off and shit. And then Ernst mentions something. He's like, yeah, it's a good thing, we use something from the first page because you know how it is, like, Stephen King's books are so long, so a lot of them go unfinished and stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, so he doesn't finish a lot of, he's saying he doesn't finish Stephen King books. And I was like wondering in the back of my head, I was like, what if he didn't finish The Colorado Kid?
No, I was kind of thinking the same thing when I heard that. I was like, first I was struck with anger, that blasphemy, and King's books. Yeah, and I will admit the same thing. His books can't, he spends so much time developing the characters that sometimes it can be, you might have to slog a little bit, but I don't think I've had a book where I felt like I had to slog a bit that I wasn't rewarded for, in the second half. And so I was a little disappointed in that, but then I started thinking the same thing. I'm like, did he read all of King's books? And then I was like, did he even finish The Colorado Kid?
There's not a ton of similarities from book to TV show. So then I was like, yeah, maybe you just read kind of the first half, and that's because that's kind of stuff that ends up in Haven, then doesn't really like go into the rest of it. Although Colorado Kid, we have our opinions on it, which is in our Patreon episode, so you can hear it there.
Yeah, you might want to check that out because I've been told it's pretty darn good, and I think you want to check out all the Patreon episodes. I mean, you deserve it.
Yeah, so that was just a question. I was like, hey, I wonder if he finished Colorado Kid. It's pretty short, though. I would hope he finished it.
One other interesting thing I noted in the commentary, well, I guess I don't know if it's interesting per se, is that they were talking about the music that was playing. And I think that's probably the third or fourth time I've heard Ernst call the band Sweetwater Radio, when we know it's Sweet Talk Radio. And speaking of which, if you become a Patreon member, our second Patreon episode, we do a soundtrack of Haven and talk about Sweet Talk Radio quite a bit. And who knows, maybe we'll do another one where we talk about Sweetwater Radio. But
well, and the funny thing is, I looked up the featured music in the episode, and none of the songs are by Sweet Talk Radio. It's one band is Wilderness of Manitoba. band, and then Brad Cohen does 2 other songs for it. So
that does sound like Sweet Talk at the in that scene though that they're talking about at the end.
That's what I got. I got that it's not Sweet Talk Radio.
Well, that'll be something interesting to check
Listeners,
into.
yeah, tell us if you're like, hey, that was Sweet Talk Radio, or if Sweet Talk Radio is listening, be like, hey, that was us. Like, what the fuck? Like, Brad Cohen's my pen name.
Yeah, don't be giving credit to some wilderness of wherever. Was it Manitoba?
Of Manitoba, yeah. That's Canadian, right?
Yeah, that's definitely Canadian. Yeah, they like the syrup too.
Yeah, the Blu-rays were a nice change. I'm sure people comically note how irate we were with the case for the container for season 1, how difficult it was. But season 2, they finally got their senses about them and made a reasonable Blu-ray case for it.
Yeah, though they did manage to somewhat thwart us again, but we.
Well, how?
Oh, with finding the commentary.
Oh, right. For those who get the Blu-rays and have a trouble, in season 1, the audio commentary is like its own menu. So you can just like, go to audio commentary, episode 1, blah, 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 blah. This one, you got to go into scene selection and then, not choose any of the scenes, but click another option that says play commentary, which is wild because they're hidden. They're like disguised. The only explanation I can find is that there are less commentaries than they're supposed to be. And that's why they're kind of like, hey, maybe if they don't even see them or notice them, they won't say anything.
Well, yeah, that might be the reason, because after episode 1, we don't get a commentary for like 4 episodes, maybe 5.
That's like 3/4 of our content. No, I'm just kidding. We'll have things to talk about, obviously, with the next episodes. But
yeah, exactly.
But they're always really interesting to dive into. You find out so much information from the commentaries.
I really loved the scene with Nathan and Duke burying the chief. I mean, it was funny, but I also found it touching. The way Nathan's, going through his father's remains, and then he finds the wedding ring on the chain. It was pretty touching. And then Duke comes up and he's like, "Yeah, I just want to, the banter between them, curry some favor with the new police chief." No, and I enjoyed the funny line about, Duke saying, "Hey, you didn't, could have told me about your dad dying," and then. Nathan saying, "Hey, you could have told me you were married." I thought that was hilarious. And then like his last little quip, just to be clear, we know I'm the lion.
Yeah.
Referencing back to the Reds comment, the lamb will never lie with the lion. So
it was a really touching scene. I'm surprised though that Duke didn't, take his shirt off. As we saw in season 1, he likes to work he likes to do his manual labor shirtless. And I'm sure a giant contingent of our audience of Haven's audience. I'm not claiming it to be our audience. A giant contingent of the audience would have loved to see him shirtless too.
Right. And
I think it was too cold.
Well, in practicality, it was probably too cold because of the season they were shooting in. But, maybe the character Duke developed, like a complex after Evie told him that he stunk, basically. She'll come see him again after he's showered.
Yeah. He's been working hard. He's sweating up, a lot of sweat pulling that kid out of the blood drain. One of my favorite scenes was Audrey and Fraudry doing the CPR. I thought that was a really slick way to deliver the idea that they both have the same memories. It was a nice disguise rather than it being expositionally, I thought honestly at the end that was a bit in your face with the like scissor memory thing. I thought the CPR was a really slick, nice delivery of, hey, they know the same stuff. And you're like, oh shit, they even have the same memories, right?
Right. And, kind of a side note to that, the Campfire Girls is a real organization. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It was founded in Maine.
Because
I thought that was pretty cool.
Did you like the scissors stuff at the end? I thought it was a bit much. And to go to the commentary, sorry, to ask you a question, then cut you off.
What do you think?
Let me tell you
what you should think. Yeah.
Let me tell you what you think. Because in the commentary, Ernst and Dunn say that other people thought that it was like over the top, and they're like, well, he's a pedophile. I think that's appropriate. And it's like, that's not what they're questioning. They're not questioning the response of stabbing a pedophile in the neck. They're questioning the idea to even have this type of like situation in the show and like this type of violence, like from a child. You know what I mean? Like the whole situation felt, I don't know. How did you feel? I thought it was a bit dark. I thought it was a bit like over the top.
No, I do think I do think it's a bit dark, and but that is the type of event in your life that you probably don't tell anyone. And if this other person that you think you have shared memories with has it as well, then wow, that might be the clincher that confirms everything. So, but I did think it was really, really dark because it was another nice touching scene. It had potential to be, and then it went dark.
Yeah, I mean, there still could be like a dark memory, that one of her foster parents like hit her once or something like that, or whatever, multiple times or something, like, which also still would have been really dark. But it just kind of felt crazy that it's like Audrey stabbed a guy in the fucking neck when she was 12. Like, that's pretty hardcore. I feel like that's just, it reminds me of the Dark Man episode. See, I finally learned I didn't call him Shadow Man this time. The Dark Man episode where with the like, yeah, our original plan was to slash her Achilles, and then fucking shove her in the fire and then incinerate her, and I'm sure the husband would have had to snort the ashes or something. Like, don't
forget dragging her to the fireplace and throwing her in.
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't even crazier. But yeah, so I felt like it was that where it's like Haven's got this, very sci-fi channel, like level of whatever, and then random just spike of super intense thing where it's like, whoa, now we're talking about like a pedophile and Audrey having to like, I'm assuming the guy died if she stabbed him in the neck. I guess he could have lived, but
well, they said, she was never abused again, but But maybe because they were little Mickey Mouse scissors, so basically like little kid scissors, maybe, got him in a right spot and he survived it. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it could have been worse. It could have been like in the, in the jugular or something, but
through the eye into the brain. Yeah.
Yeah. I think well, whatever. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to say what you could survive. So I don't know. I thought it was a little over the top because they decide what's the memory she has, right? And they chose just such an obscenely dark and bleak memory. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen either, but it just feels kind of out of tone with the rest of the show.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you with that. I was really hoping for kind of a lighter moment, but yeah. We had to kind of cement the relationship between the Audreys, that they're going to work on this together. So I really did like that a lot, is that, they basically told their stories and like I said, it went dark, but then they agreed to work together, even though it was in question. Our Audrey didn't know if Rodri was going to go along, but she sure did.
Well, yeah, I think what you just said is like a nice point, is that this could have been like a nice happy moment. And I think the feelings of wanting to protect each other might, and I guess that's from a point of vulnerability, but I actually think it should have been like a happy moment that you share. Like, because that's also like, can be a vulnerable thing, is to tell someone what you're like, what's the thing that truly made you happy. Because most of the time it's not like, most of the time it isn't something like, oh, I got a Hemi-Cuda,
Yeah.
That's usually not what it is. It's usually like small stuff that seem mundane kind of outwardly, right? Like, Inception, right? The kind of way they convince Cillian Murphy, is a second time we're going to mention him on the pod. The way they kind of convince him, right? Inception spoilers, if you haven't seen it in the decade it's been out, is they convinced him that the dad loved him and put that pinwheel from his childhood in the safe at the end, right? And that pinwheel is the one happy moment he had with his dad, right? So I think that would have worked out really well for me, is this what's Audrey's like one kind of vulnerable, happy moment from her childhood that she doesn't really talk about. Someone that had the same memories as her would understand the feeling. You know what I mean?
Right. Because they couldn't share memories about Agent Howard because they're two completely different Agent Howards. So,
which I'd forgotten. I remembered the two Audreys, but I had forgotten that there was two Howards actually.
Yeah. Well, you got to wonder what they're thinking in their heads. I mean, this would be. Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you that. Now, what do you think about the Audrey Fraudry paradox?
Yeah, so this is a way to kind of definitively, we were pretty sure on the fact that she was Lucy because of the cut in the foot, and this is kind of the nail in the coffin of like, yeah, you're not who you think you are, like, lady. But the question's still up for debate on who is the real Audrey, right? So, but I think it's it's an interesting thing to do for sure. Can't really think of too many TV shows off the top of my head that I can think of having like something like this, you know?
No, this is pretty unique. You're right.
Yeah. So it's a cool drama point to kind of literally confront yourself and it makes you question everything you thought about yourself, which is great for drama. So I love the twist. The actress is good. She's got a nice Audrey vibe too, where it's like a little stone cold, but still compassionate, you know?
Yeah, no, I thought the actress was tremendous. And, I lean towards for Audrey being Audrey because that Agent Howard comes in with a team of FBI agents, whereas you never see, old Audrey's Agent Howard with anyone else. He's on his own side, and he obviously was working with the chief.
Did new Howard have a properly fitted suit? I think that's going to kind of determine who the real Howard is.
It was a pretty sharp looking suit. He's a pretty tall guy again. Goodness, they must only hire tall guys for the FBI. Yeah. A couple other things. How many times are they going to rain animals or amphibians on Nathan and Audrey? I mean, good Lord.
Well, it wasn't amphibians before, right? It was birds.
It was birds, but I said animals and amphibians.
Okay. Frog. So what? Birds the first time and frogs now.
Yeah.
It's gonna get dangerous at some point if they start dropping anything heavier.
Well, at what point do they start dropping anvils? They go Wile E. Coyote and.
Well, I mean, you were suggesting they use a giant magnet, right, and resurfacing, so to pull the guys through the pier floor. So they're clearly going Acme style.
Well, and I think you actually mentioned that.
I'm just kidding.
And credited it to me, but I like the idea. So, no, that was interesting. And then, what do you think about our plus size criminal being named Little Mike?
Hey, that's what you do. Like, calling someone skinny or little, and they're the opposite. So that's what makes it funny.
Yeah, I was just curious if you thought naming portly actors like little is a bit cliched now. Finally,
yeah, I guess but maybe 10 years ago, I think we were still on the verge, of that not being, we were like, it was like I think that had pretty much run its course. I think Haven kind of was right in the tail end of that being still funny. I feel like now, it's overplayed, but.
Right.
I think it depends also on its implementation. If it was built up over more time and they're like, oh man, he's like, I don't know. Or in the opposite sense, where they're like, he's a big guy and you see him and he's a tiny guy, but they're like, personality, he's really scary.
Hey, no actors were body shamed on this podcast.
I think it was kind of just a non-point for me because I was like, he got a gun from this guy. Do we really need to talk to him? And he's driving again. So I felt like Little Mike was just kind of a waste of time. I was like, we don't really need to talk to this guy.
So, and then kind of my last question for you was, how bad would it suck to have TJ's trouble?
Depends on what you're reading, It could be cool.
Exactly. I read Stephen King. I read fantasy novels with lots of wars and death. Yeah.
Well, you better start reading romance and, self-help books. What happens there if he's reading self-help books? Is that he's magically not an alcoholic now?
Yeah. Hey, I'm sober and I'm confident and empowered.
Yeah. What happens if he reads The Secret?
I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
He reads in it. He's the same. Nothing changes.
Nothing changes. People. I just thought about that. I was like, I would have to totally change my reading tastes, and and that would suck to not be able to read Stephen King anymore, or Joe Hill and other horror writers.
But does it apply if you watch his movies and stuff? You just watch the movies.
It's got to not. I mean, that would just be impossible. You would just have to put on Nickelodeon and 24/7, and even that might not be good because you could start getting slimed and shit all the time.
Or what if it's because how would a curse work for you reading something? Maybe it's like how I questioned how a curse would work knowing days of the week for Helena's, hey, on Fridays, it happens. So maybe it's things he imagines, you know what I mean? Things that stimulate his imagination or the imagery he creates in his mind. So, maybe eventually it would, I don't know, I guess movies, he doesn't have to really imagine, but possibly replicate what he's seeing in his mind or what he's thinking about. Well, in that case, he should write a book where his wife comes back to life and then read it.
Hey, there you go. And ask for more wishes.
Yeah, but in his case, it's a pretty easy. It's better than the Dark Man. Has to live in a fucking pitch black house.
He's blind. There's no difference.
Yeah, but he can't go outside. He has to stay in that house.
That's what sucks. Yeah, he should be able to go out at night.
And Vicky can't really draw. Without endangering everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, that's a tough one
hobby.
too.
TJ doesn't seem like a huge book reader, so
yeah. Well, his trouble was triggered when his wife died, and and considering he's been nothing but drinking since then, I mean, drinking and reading don't go very well hand in hand.
All right, so that's the end of kind of our coverage on the main episode. So, like every episode, we like to just pick a subject. Sometimes they're humorous, sometimes they're more. I hate to use the word intellectual with us, but more more academic. Let's say. Let's use that phrase.
Just last week, we were discussing Aristotle's The Good Life, and make it sound like we're heathens. We are intellectuals.
Yeah, that was after we talked about MTV's The Challenge. No, I'm just kidding. But we're just kind of talking about the jump from season to season. TV shows, kind of how the structure is you watch X amount of episodes and then it kind of takes a break. Obviously in real time, it's because they need to shoot more episodes, but that's kind of the structure they've taken, is that you build, ramp up to the end of a season, in Haven's case, 13 episodes. And then you leave and then you come back for season 2. And a lot of shows take different approaches to how they jump back in for season 2. Right. So Haven, as we discussed earlier, comes back the second that season 1 ended. You said you like that, right?
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mentioned why I like it, because a lot of times you end up with shows having to explain a gap of time that wasn't covered from in between the end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2. And that's valuable time. You could just be plowing ahead with the story. So
I'll actually take a divergent path that I like the time jump thing from season to season. I don't love jumping back in the second from. I like this episode. I thought Haven did a really good job of coming back in for season 2. Just to answer this question real quick, is that I really liked this first episode, and I liked how it transferred all the kind of. It took the baggage of the finale, but not all of it. It feels nice. It doesn't feel like we're overloaded with all this season 1 shit. We got the Chief, New Audrey, and the Rev's threat, and they kind of carry those ideas through while presenting new stuff, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, exactly. So and I'm not diametrically opposed to having gaps, and sometimes that's really cool. You get to introduce new characters that way, and new storylines without having to spend all the time. So I just liked it. I thought it was neat.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think you see it a lot.
I do like the time jump in when people do that from season to season, because one, it reflects kind of reality, because you've been away from the show for a while. So it's a little difficult when when you're watching in real time and a show ends and then the next season starts the exact second it left off. You're kind of like, if you haven't watched it recently, you're like, hey, or you're not binging, you're like, hey, what happened again? Like at the end, the details aren't as fresh. So it's sometimes it was fine for us because we're watching them all in a row, right? Like,
right. And this, currently now a lot of viewers stream. So it's kind of,
but the gap in time, in time though is still existent, right? From, if you're watching Mandalorian right now, the break between season 1 and 2 is still, I haven't started season 2, so I don't even know how they handle the jump, but I would imagine a time jump. That seems kind of how that show does time jumps from episode to episode, let alone, season.
So, one clever way to a time jump is done is in The Office. So like The Office, they really don't cover the summers because the documentary crew doesn't film during the summer.
Yeah. So it's nice in-universe explanation, right, for why.
Well, and they do their funny little interview, like one-on-one interviews where they say what they did in the summer, and that's it's kind of neat, if you like The Office, because I obviously love The Office, but.
So on shows that did kind of what Haven did with jumping back the second, I know one show that I didn't like when they did that was, and for maybe a different reason, was The Killing, jumping from season 1 to season 2. it kind of ends, on this like season 1 cliffhanger and goes into season 2. But obviously there's going to be some kind of spoilers for end of seasons discussion for a couple of these shows. So if you don't want to hear a bunch of shows be talked about, you might want to be warned. But we'll kind of mention the show boldly and then talk before we mention the ending to it. So for the killing at the end of season 1, you don't catch Rosie's killer. It continues into season 2. So you're like, at the end of season 1, you're like, oh, what the fuck? Like, I got to watch another fucking 10 episodes to find Rosie's killer. Are you fucking serious? Like, I got to do this whole journey again. It's only in half, which, some people might be like, oh, it's great because I want more of it. But I was like, yeah, I fucking want to be done with this mystery and move on to another one.
Yeah, I think, and this is just my preference, but I think, it's cool. You can have like a overarching mystery that doesn't get solved there. But if there's a, like a fucking crime, like, I don't want to take 3 years to solve a murder from the first episode. I mean, what, come on.
And it's just kind of weird because it's like season 1 and 2 are one story, then season 3 and 4 are each kind of individual story. So you're like, all right, well, what's up with this? Like this one mystery is 2 seasons, but the other ones are just 1 season.
Wait, I was going to say how it felt to me was like they were milking it. Seemed like they were intentionally milking it to stretch it out for more episodes.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some examples of your least favorite? We'll kind of go from worst to best. What are some of your examples of your least favorite shows that jumps from season 1 to 2?
Okay, so I really, for me, I had a hard time with this exercise because I watch shows and I follow them because I love them, and just rare, and that I'm older now and I don't remember a lot of the old shows I watch. My memory's not what it used to be. So, but one I didn't like was Millennium.
Do you remember? Like, can you elaborate?
It's because the tone completely changed. Season 1 was led by Chris Carter, and for those of you who don't recall, Chris Carter is the creator of X-Files. So,
okay.
And they took, and it was some people didn't like this, but you got to remember, this is the 90s. I was into the Killer of the Week and Road to the Apocalypse stuff. They took that, and they changed it, and then Glenn Morgan and James Wong, and I know you're a fan of James Wong. I mean, it was Chris Carter, so it was dark, and it was, crime of the week.
Mysterious.
And then, Morgan and Wong take over, and they start adding all this supernatural shit with demons and, so it's still apocalyptic, but it's, focusing, so much on the Millennium group that Frank Contract works with, and that. But then for season 3, they bring Chris Carter comes back, and it kind of returns to that. And
okay, so that's kind of like. Yeah, that happens too, right? Like, obviously a little later on down the line, but like Community switches showrunners from Dan Harmon doing season 1, 2, and 3 and kind of losing control of the ship at the end of 3 there to NBC, to the guys who ran Just Shoot Me, I think, take over for season 4, and the show goes fucking off the rails to just pure shit. And then Harmon comes back on and kind of rights the ship, right? Similar to what you're talking about. Obviously in tone, nothing alike, but
yeah, they changed. I even remember they had this one like goofy episode where Frank Black is like cracking jokes all the time, and it's almost like a comedy episode, and that's not Lance Hendrickson.
So one I picked for my least favorite is Heroes from season 1 to season 2. I loved season 1. I haven't rewatched in a long time. I wonder how it's aged, but I'd seen it multiple times. I loved season 1. It was so cool to me. And then season 2 is, I'll defend it more than I think other people would, where other people were like, it's complete shit. I won't say it's complete shit. And I see the intent behind their actions, but it just doesn't work. Like season 2 is just kind of fucked up. And then you add in the writer's strike happening, and that's what really fucked up season 2. Because season 2, in Heroes, it's all about ordinary people finding out they're extraordinary, right? That's kind of their tagline the writers use to themselves. And then in season 2, their little internal tagline was extraordinary people having to fit back into ordinary. And
because season 1's save the cheerleader, save the world, right?
First half of season 1 is save the cheerleader, and then the second half they're trying to figure out the explosion in New York. And then season 2, it jumps ahead in time, like 6 months, and everybody's situation is completely different. And so you're spending so much time trying to figure out what these new status quos are. And then they're kind of, a lot of the subplots they set up just go nowhere. And then because of the writer's strike, they kind of abandon everything and just hack it all to pieces. And then because of fan reception, they weren't liking stuff. They're like, okay, there's too much romance. You guys need to and it's going too slow. And so the writers got pissed off and like, all right, fine. You don't want it slow? We're going to fucking take this fast. And then you get villains, which is horrible. Another one that I'll say was one that I didn't like initially, but I liked once we got further, we got more distance on it to so it's kind of an in-between of I liked it and didn't like it. I didn't like it initially, then grew to love it, was The Wire. Was when you jump from season 1 to 2, the characters are all kind of scattered. Like the group, they formed the group in season 1. And then season 2 comes about and, you're kind of expecting this cop procedural thing. And at the end of season 1, they kind of got scattered throughout the ranks and they're all doing different things. And Jimmy is with the boat people because he's kind of got punished by getting put on a shitty assignment in season 2. Season 2 focuses on the docks, right? And so
it's the Teamsters, the dock teams, the Teamsters like at the docks, and how the union's corrupt.
Yeah. So season 2 kind of takes us away from the drug dealers, the project drug dealers that we've grown attached to. And you're kind of like, well, what the fuck? Those are the guys I like watching. Like, I want to see more Idris Elba and Wood, and all that. And you kind of don't get any of that anymore. So then it's kind of, you don't like it. And then season 3 comes around, 4 and 5, and you see that's what they kind of do every season is they kind of jump to a new area of crime in Baltimore and stuff. And it makes, I think, season 2 a lot more palatable once you realize the design.
Yeah, the structure. And because I remember like the last season they bring in the media, the newspaper reporters.
It's journalism, right? Is like
journalism,
the
right.
focus.
And, I love The Wire. It's one of my favorites of all time. And
that's one that I know fans were initially like, hey, what the fuck? And I'd heard season 2 is the worst season, which I like season 2. But, you're kind of off put at the beginning. You're like, hey, what the fuck? And it takes a long time for the crew to, Lester, Jimmy, and everybody to kind of get back together. And I think that's what, leaves kind of a sour taste where you're like, hey, I want my group back. I want my comfort, even though The Wire is not really comforting.
Yeah, no.
Which I don't think people were aware of yet. Right. And then you see the design and you're like, oh, this is awesome that they take a different approach every season to the crime of Baltimore.
So what I came up with when a season that I liked was the jump from series 1 to series 2 in Doctor Who. So
Doctor Who?
Doctor Who.
Well, the jump from series 1 to series 2. So from when Christopher Eccleston steps out to when David Tennant becomes the Doctor, right?
David Tennant becomes the Doctor. Right?
Oh, okay. So are you saying the final episode of series 1 is the parting of the ways?
So basically, the way it ends is, for those who are fans of the show, the Doctor and Rose. So Doctor, and if you don't know Doctor Who, well, my God,
you're shit out of luck.
we probably can't be friends, but you can still be a Patreon member. But I might hold back on that Wu-Tang nickname. But no, just kidding. You will get one. But it kind of ends with the Doctor to save everything. Is to take in all of the energy to like kill the, I can't remember if it was the Daleks or not.
It was the Daleks.
To destroy them. He basically has to take in all the energy, which forces him to regenerate. And he regenerates at the end of the episode. And then when we get to series 2, they land at by Rose's apartment, and the new Doctor has to rest and recover, because they are always a little cagey and disoriented when there's a regeneration. So
so you're saying you like the transfer from the finale to series 1 to the Christmas invasion?
Yeah, because I
gotta disagree with you on this one.
I know you're not gonna. I knew you weren't going to, but that's okay. Myself.
No. I don't mind the minutes, like jumping right back in after the transformation happens, the regeneration happens. It's the idea that he's gone the entire episode, so you're kind of like. I actually rewatched it recently this year when they finally re-added Doctor Who to HBO Max. I was watching through old series, and it just kind of like sucks because it's like I remember my feelings at the time. So obviously, when we watched Doctor Who, I came in the room one time and I was like, "Hey, what are you watching?" And you're like, "Oh, it's a show that came on when I was a kid." they brought it back. Like, you want to watch? I was like, sure. And then when it started, I was like, it's kind of dumb. Like, there's fucking dummies, these plastic dummies and shit. And like, I don't understand what this, but I actually really liked it, even though it was cheesy as fuck. I loved it. And then we've watched ever since. I'm not up to date yet right now on the Jodie episodes, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, I'm not. I only got a couple in, and yeah, it's and like Doctor Who's supposed to be still have an element of camp, because I liked it since I was a kid in the 70s, with a shout out to Tom Baker of the old series. Tom Baker was the man.
So Eccleston though was like the first Doctor I knew. So at the end of series 1, when he goes away, I was like, oh, what the fuck, like. Fuck this guy, and I wasn't really familiar with regeneration and shit, so I didn't really know that. I knew obviously it happened because they had talked about it, but I didn't think it was going to happen then when I was watching it. Whereas now, they fucking spoil the shit out of it and tell you, hey, the Doctor's going to regenerate this episode, so tune in, they make a giant spectacle of it. But at the time, I didn't know it was coming, so I was like, what the fuck? Like, I don't want to watch this new guy. Bring Christopher Eccleston back. Like, fuck this guy. I'm never going to like this guy. And then obviously David Tennant became my favorite Doctor. So this time when I was rewatching, I almost had a similar feeling where I was like, oh man, I don't know if like I'm gonna like. I was like, maybe David Tennant hasn't aged as well as I remember. I was like, but Christopher Eccleston's aged really well, his episodes, like his performance. I was like, so maybe I was like, am I gonna flip? Am I gonna like Christopher Eccleston more? And during the Christmas Invasion, you're not getting much Tennant. And I was like, oh man, I'm a little nervous about like how I feel about this. And he comes back at the end, and I was like, oh man. Like it's like I can breathe. It's like a breath of fresh air. So I don't know if that's like a good thing or a bad thing. That
it builds some tension in you and some
if
discomfort.
You're gonna like them or not. So it's kind of annoying because you're watching and you're like, I don't give a shit about Mickey and Rose. Like, stop. Like, obviously I care about them, but I'm like, I kind of don't care. I want to see what this guy's like. I want to see the new Doctor. Like, show me the new Doctor. Get this shit out of the way. So it almost feels like a waiting game of like, we got to sit through them worrying how to do this without the Doctor, and nothing's really happening for a while, and then he comes in at the end.
It's the anticipation because because especially since you've been waiting since the first series ended, and you get it, and he comes out and he saves the day as usual, and
and he's great. He's great. The second he comes on, he's talking. That charisma's back, and I'm back to being how old was I? Like 13. It's like back to being like 13, 14-year-old me again, like enjoying him for the first time. But I would say I actually think Matt Smith's switch over is better. Actually, Matt Smith's first episode is fucking awesome. I love his first episode. It's one of the best regeneration episodes ever.
Yeah. And it's one of the another reason why I really liked not just the switch over, but I like season 2 is because it gave us David Tennant, and he became my favorite Doctor of all time. Mm-hmm. Though, as I mentioned earlier, I really, on the old series, I love Tom Baker, but and I see them almost as apples and oranges. The new series with Russell T Davies, did, but Matt Smith was awesome as well. I mean, you remember The Lodger is one of my favorite episodes. I mean, I still love that episode. But I like that how Rose provided the continuity between the two series, mm-hmm. and I just love Russell Davies basically took an excellent iconic series and made it better, outside of just talking about the transition. So, I mean, I think it really built up steam for the series overall, the overarching program.
Well, yeah, I think David Tennant coming along was a great thing. But I don't know if I love Christmas Invasion. But it kind of happens like with my favorite Capaldi's introduction. I'm not I really don't like his first episode, but by the end I was like, oh fuck, I don't want this guy to go.
Yeah, I grew to like Capaldi quite a bit.
A show I liked. Now I haven't finished the full season actually, so maybe I'm talking out of place here, but I really liked and this is maybe you don't like this, is I liked how Mr. Robot from season 1 to 2, like season 2 just kind of like leaves you in complete darkness about what happened at the end of season 1. Like you don't know shit about like what, like it's almost like you're starting a new show again. You're like, hey, what the fuck? Like obviously, you're still with the guy, but his situation has changed dramatically as of the first episode of season 2, which I haven't gotten far into season 2. So don't say anything. Don't spoil anything.
I finished 1 and I think I started 2 and I think I didn't like the start of 2, and that's when I fell off.
See, that's what I like season 2 because it just throws you into like complete chaos. And I like that Mr. Robot's, kind of a show that challenges you, I think, as
Right.
a viewer. And that's what I really appreciated from it. I'm going to cheat a little bit and talk about a show from season 2 to 3. It's a bit of a cheat. It's not from season 1 to 2.
I'll allow it.
Fringe from season 2 to 3, I think, was also kind of a challenging, similar to, I think, Wire and Mr. Robot. It's a bit of a challenge jumping in. Is, at the end of season 2, spoilers for Fringe. I also haven't finished Fringe. Also a show I was considering doing a rewatch pod for. Okay, so at the end of season 2, Olivia goes to the alternate universe to rescue Peter, and she gets trapped on that side, and they return. So season 3 begins with her stuck in this alternate universe working for that Fringe department while the people from the main group, are working. And so you're seeing the kind of changes as she's working with these alternate versions of people. Well, one guy, I think Lincoln is not in their universe, or at least as far as I got. So she's working with like this other group, and like you're kind of like, hey, what the fuck? Like, are they just like, how long is this gonna last? And so it was a really crazy thing to kind of start season 3 in an alternate universe, and then you're bouncing back and forth between the two.
That concept sounds like it would work with a certain book. Yeah.
Well, if you want to, that's a tease between what might have gone down in our Joyland Patreon episode.
Have we mentioned Patreon? I don't think we've mentioned it hardly at all. Yeah.
Yeah, only 3 shills an episode. But that's one that I really liked was Fringe season 2 to 3 was 2. I was like, wow, this is crazy. They went to the alternate universe, and 3, I was like, oh my God, they're staying. Like, well, Olivia's staying. I was like, this is fucking crazy that they have to bounce, like what a ballsy move, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say bold. And it's weird because I'm the more profane of the two of us, but yeah, I try to clean up for the listeners, but nonetheless, no, I agree with you. It's very bold, ballsy, and it takes guts. It's not easy to do. You have to be very skillful, otherwise you turn it into a complete shit show.
Which I think Fringe was skillful. I thought they did a
very
great job.
Skillful. Yeah.
Once again, I didn't finish Fringe, so don't spoil that either.
I won't. You know me, I don't remember half the shit anyways anymore, so you don't have to worry about me spoiling it.
I know ones that was neutral on were like House of Cards and kind of Lost left me kind of being like, like whatever, like feeling moving into the second seasons of those shows.
Yeah, I really didn't watch a lot of Lost, and yeah, House of Cards. I think I was okay between 1 and 2, but then it started going off the rails with the other seasons. And
yeah, I think the 1 and 2 is kind of just like, well, whatever. I don't know. I was just kind of neutral on the switch. All right. So yeah, that's just like the shows we were, examples. I thought, like I said, Haven did a great job from season 1 to season 2.
No, I would agree with you completely.
And that's the end of this episode. So you can uncover more secrets of Haven with us in 1 week. Trouble drops every Monday. So make sure to tune in wherever you listen to podcasts like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Pandora, TuneIn, Deezer. And you can even listen on YouTube. If you want to contact us, the easiest way to reach us is by email. You can reach us at troubledrewatchpod@gmail.com. If you want the podcast straight from the source, you can visit our website, troubledpodcast.com. Whenever we upload episodes and put updates, you can find it there. See what we're up to. Any links, if you're having trouble finding links in the show notes and stuff, just visit the website. You can find it there too. But let's say you're on Twitter and want to follow us there. We're also there on Twitter. I've just used the word there like 100 times. Hope you guys are sick of it. Our Twitter handle is at Havens Troubled with a capital H and a capital T. You can follow us for more Haven-related irreverence, as usual. Podcasting is fun. What's that?
I was going to say, have you developed a method yet for them to contact us via carrier pigeon?
Not yet, but it's on the way. We got the tin cans with strings for the $10 Patreon members that stretch across the country or continents. Continents is a $12 Patreon bonus, just so you guys know.
You got to scale up because of the costs.
Exactly. We're on the topic of Patreon. Podcasting is fun. We love it, but it doesn't pay our bills yet. That's why you can find us on Patreon. There's a link in the show notes, or if you go to Patreon and search for Trouble to Return to Haven, you can find us. We have 3 tiers. Joining the first for $1 makes you a Haven tourist, where you'll get access to our production documents. It is filled with fun behind-the-scenes info, as well as a fan shout-out and a Wu-Tang nickname. Joining our $3 tier makes you a Haven resident, where you will gain access to our bonus series, Troubled with Extra Syrup. We travel outside the confines of Haven to bring you more than you ever thought you needed. We've covered Stephen King books, soundtracks, TV shows, real-life events, you name it. But we always find ways to tie it back to Haven. Lastly, our $5 tier is our Haven's Trouble tier, where you get access to Director's Cuts episodes that'll be dropping here in 2021. We're rolling them out. So you'll also have the option to set up a Zoom call, Q&A type thing if you want. And we can turn it into an episode or production document if you want. If you think there's interesting information or you want the world to kind of hear our discussion or anything like that, if you think it'll be entertaining, we can set that up for you. But I know that's it for me, and we'll be back next week. And thank you for listening. This is Alex French.
And this is Rich French, wanting to echo Alex's sentiment for thanks for your listenership. We truly do appreciate it. And like I said, if you want one of those Zoom calls, we can block out the video, so that you won't have to go flush out your eyes at an emergency eye wash station after seeing us. But all jokes aside, everyone, thanks again. Please be safe. And please remember, never let your troubles get you down.